Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pals Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing A Quiet Place Part 2. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Following the events at home, the Abbott family now faces the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats lurking beyond the sand path. I'm going to start off with my pros. I really enjoyed the beginning of this film as they explained how it all began and splitting the shots between the mom and the dad, one with audio and one without. Felt like it added a different thing to the film versus just showing one side with audio or the other side without audio. They played well together. It just seemed like it was a mashup. You went from view 1 to view 2 and all of a sudden it just came together and it gave you this bigger picture, or to me the spatial reference. I actually felt that I kind of got a layout of the town a little more than just following one person and just seeing what they were seeing. Next, the soundtrack, or let's say the lack of. Well, they do have a soundtrack in the film, but it blends in so well that it doesn't stand out too much or overwhelms the film. It's just the right amount and at the right time to get you motivated or get you into the movie. So the music, to me, I want to say it's like a blend of melody between the imagery or the scenes and the characters, and then you add the music and it just blends all together. It's not overwhelming, but it's still there. Next point, the acting. Once again, it was amazing on behalf of Emily and Millicent, the mother and daughter. They totally carried the film. I loved how they split them up so they can each have their own spotlight on them and not overtake the other. I also enjoyed the scenes when monsters showed up and they were close up and you can see the fine details on them. It felt like I was watching the behind the scenes of a monster film and getting to see how the creature was made and stuff like that. Now, moving on to my cons. I get that the son's role was for him to overcome his fears, but it made him look like he didn't have common sense. For example, when he was left with the baby and he left the baby by himself while he wandered outside with a broken ankle, which I'm going to get to in a bit. He was looking and searching for what? He knew his mom was out. Why did he venture out? It didn't make sense to me. Next is the oxygen. Why didn't he check the oxygen tank? If he knew the baby needed oxygen, wouldn't you check the levels? I mean, even a novice would do that. Next is not taking the precautions when going into the furnace. I mean, okay, he is young, but I think he's old enough to actually understand that you can get locked in there or you have to take certain precautions, especially since there are monsters out there and this is what, day 400 something. So you're not a noob to this. So you know what the rules are, how to move things and how to do things. So I just can't really ignore the way he acted because, I think he was old enough. If anything, I would have had him play a younger role or had somebody else young age be in there so then we can say, hey, he's a small kid. He doesn't know better. Okay, now onto the broken ankle. When the bear trap hit, I mean, it either broke a bone or it made it so that he had open wounds. When that happens, he wouldn't be able to stand up for a few days. I mean, this is right after, I would say, just for the sake of it, I would say 2 days after the event of the ankle. And yet he's already climbing ladders, walking on the ankle. We see him when he's holding the baby, he's putting pressure on the ankle. No, if he really got injured, he would be laying down or at least crawling. And if that happened, it would have made a better impact on us. Watching him crawl on the ground to get from the bed to the baby or into the furnace, and that would add more of a tense situation, seeing the monster coming close and he's crawling, but they didn't. They actually showed him oh yeah, he can walk around now. Next point is the monsters. Okay, I know I said that I like being able to see them up close, and at the same time, I feel that it took away from the mystery of what they are or what they were capable of doing and how they attacked or behaved. That actually indirectly took away from the fear or the danger, but maybe that's what John wanted, for us to learn not to fear them and at the end just to stand up to them. And like the characters did, they fought them and they found courage to stand up to them and defeat them. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly, see how he saw the movie and what grade he gave this movie.
So personally, this film I thought was one that just elaborated more on the original, and I didn't feel that this movie was necessary in retrospect to what I'm going to be talking about in terms of some of the characters and the sort of world building that this second part was trying to do that I think didn't come to fruition. I like the direction of maybe one or two of these concepts, but I thought that they fell pretty short. it. So let's get into it. The characters. Let's start with the characters here. Emily Blunt's character is definitely one that really stood out. And of course, Millicent as well. Sal pointed that out earlier too. And the actor who played Emmett, his name is Cillian Murphy. I also like his presence in the film, but at the same time, I think introducing a character like that into a second part, rather than giving us some sort of indication of who this character was from the first part, made me believe that they just wrote this character in to sort of fill in this role that was missing. I kind of looked at him as, replacing John's character in a way, that they needed a person like him there to look over the family. He definitely filled that role in terms of, Evelyn, aka Emily Blunt's character, asking him to go after her and find her daughter. I do like the relationship that started building between the two because they weren't on the same page at the beginning. After meeting each other, Regan and Emmett at Emmett's location, which was this rundown sort of warehouse area. I think to me that was the one thing that I found myself most invested in. It wasn't even the alien-like creatures or most of the other stuff. It was just this relationship that built over time between Regan and Emmett, because they established what it was towards the beginning of the film. You saw these two characters interact with one another from there on out until the end of the film, and they convinced me that, hey, where they started and where they end, I can buy into that, given what they went through together. But like I said, an introduction to a character like Emmett, though, does raise some questions for me because of how short the film was. The film was a little over an hour and 30 minutes. Because of that, I felt like all the scenes in the film, they had to have mattered. They have to have had some sort of imprint on whatever the narrative that the movie was going for. Because of that, they needed to establish Emmett as a character by going to the past. By doing that, we see John's character there again, which I kind of just looked at as a cameo because we already knew what happened to him in the first part. Because of this, you end up wasting 15 to 20 minutes of screen time just to get the point, hey, this character is somebody who our cast of individuals from the first part are aware of, so that when we reintroduce him in the present time, you as an audience can identify with him. You might not know his past in detail because he's new here, but you will get to know him. But at least he was a character that existed before this invasion started. So that's where my concern is, because they used what little time they had in the film just for the purpose of introducing this character. Sure, we get to see how things were before the invasion started. Sure, we kind of see how things started when the aliens made their way into that particular town. And the question is, did I really need to see that? No, because in the first part, you guys have already gone to such length to just buy me into the idea of the concept of this film, which is you can't be making a lot of noise. And I'm good for that. I don't need to know what happened prior because it doesn't add anything revolutionary that would make the concept of our characters having to live life now in the way they did. It doesn't elevate that concept to any higher degree than it already was in the first part. So had they just cut that backstory and then just have our characters run into Emmett and then just have Emily Blunt's character recognize that the family is familiar with this individual and then just give us a quick, 5-minute rundown of who this character is instead of giving us this flashback, then I would have been okay with that. I don't know if they had that flashback scene to help us reestablish ourselves into this world that they're now living in. But again, personally, I could have done without that scene with how they were portraying how things were before the aliens invaded, because they could have definitely use that time for other stuff, especially this being the concept that I felt I was most interested in this film, that would sort of take it to a different sort of atmosphere in a sense. And it's when Emmett told the family that, hey, you guys don't know, some people, they're just not worth fighting for, something to that degree. And I was thinking to myself, okay, have people gone corrupted or something during this time? And sure enough, later we get this scene down by the dock area where Emmett and Regan were trying to find a boat, and they were approached by these people who have gone sort of haywire, and I thought they were going to run with that idea, and I really like that idea. I mean, it's pretty standard in like zombie TV series, if you want to look in that light, where sometimes it's not really the zombies that are the true enemies, but the humans and how they are treating each other in a dire situation that they have found themselves in. But the problem here is they didn't really go anything beyond what they showed in that scene, and to me, I was very disappointed in that, because it felt like that was such a big emphasis that Emmett made at the beginning of the film that there was no payoff to it when I actually saw the way some of these humans were acting now in this post-alien invasion environment. So I was very, very disappointed in that, actually. And Sal alluded to it, but I, too, was very disappointed in Marcus, the son. They tried to give him a redemption by having him take down one of the aliens, but I think everything that led up to that moment, I just couldn't justify rooting for him because of what he did to the baby, because of how he handled the situation while the mom was away. Again, I could kind of understand that maybe he was starting to get worried and wanted to make sure that maybe his mom was getting close to returning, so he wanted to get like a vantage point to kind of use the binocular to see what was out there. I can sort of buy into that, okay, but when he was stumbling back into their little safe zone and before re-entering the furnace, he had the mental capacity in that fight or flight sort of situation to grab that radio, which nearly got him killed. To me, that really conflicts the sort of character who he is, because I don't feel like at the time hasn't been established enough for me to think that he's capable of thinking on the fly. Again, given that he was so afraid of having his mom leave and leaving him to watch over his baby sister. Things like that made me feel that this movie was not needed, and actually it sort of brought down how I felt about some of these characters, especially him. Again, sure, he was able to take down an alien, but I just couldn't find myself after that forgiving him, at least not yet, because they're definitely are going to make like a part 3. Who knows how long this is going to turn into like a movie like series. I even would go as far as say I felt kind of disgusted in what he did. And again, I know he's still a kid, but they could have just gone about that in a different way and I would have still been okay with it. Maybe, and this is just how maybe they could have just played into the whole idea of some of these humans, they're not worth saving because of how they've come. Maybe have them somehow stumble across this factory that they're at, and then Marcus hears a sound. I don't know. Have him sort of deal with that situation where there are these humans who are just there to loot stuff and take advantage of the humans that are still kind and just trying to survive. I would have liked that more than just an alien popping up. But at the same time, it does provide a dilemma because, again, any sound you make will attract these aliens. So at the same time, it does make the concept of like humans doing bad or evil things in this post-alien invasion world sort of mute, because as we saw what happened between Emmett and Regan when they got tangled up with these individuals, all they needed to do was make some sound, aliens would come running and get rid of the problem. So I like the concept. I wish they would have established a bit more, but I think in totality though, given the sort of concept that this movie has of things having to be done in a quiet manner, it doesn't work as well. If anything, like I said, what this movie did for me was it brought some of these characters down, and even the aliens themselves, we found out that they're unable to travel by water unless they're on a boat. It got to a point where I started referring to this movie as not a quiet place but a coincidental place, because there were too many scenes that happened in which things needed to line up in a certain way for things to have ended in a positive light or a negative light. Things such as Emily Blunt's character just left the gun there for the taking so that later son can actually grab it and then shoot the alien. Okay. During the struggle between the humans and, with Emmett and Regan, there was also the struggle back at the warehouse with Evelyn having to deal with the alien. And then when one of the aliens was about to get to them in the furnace area, this was when Regan and Emmett were at that radio station, and then Regan was able to broadcast the sound that would have transmitted through that portable radio device that, again, Marcus grabbed before he re-entered the furnace, which almost got him killed. Like, there was all these coincidences that just kept on happening, and I thought to myself, wow, okay, in the first part, there were moments like this too. Especially the part that I looked to, obviously, was when Evelyn was giving birth, and all these things needed to happen in order for her to have given birth without the alien recognizing that there was somebody in the house, in the room right next to it, with the fireworks going off in the distance, stuff like that. I think that was sort of the lore to me for the first part, but some of these concepts that were done in the first part got redundant really fast in the second part. That's why I felt like towards the end of the film, nothing really new got introduced into this film. And because of that, also in addition to just some of these characters being brought down, I felt like this movie was just not necessary. I wish it would just ended on the first part. But like I said too, it looks like they're going to make a third part. Again, another comparison. Emily Blunt stepping on the nail to me in the first part is equivalent to Marcus getting snared by that bear trap. Again, redundancy. This film doesn't elevate it to the point where I feel it justified a second part. And now they're going to make a third part. As it currently stands, I'm not very enticed to go watch the third part. Unfortunately, I'm going to be kind of harsh on my overall score here. For the second part here, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I even recommended some of our friends to go watch it with us who haven't seen the first one, and I think they enjoyed it a whole lot more because they didn't see the first one, but I think they would have felt the same way I did because we tend to like the same things about a lot of the redundancy that this second part had and how it didn't really elevate the narrative to warrant a second part and now a third part potentially on its way. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me.
I see your point. I do agree on some of them, but to me, I think I just wanted a little more from the first part for the story to continue. And the way it went, it's like I'm halfway. I didn't really enjoy it as part one, but I didn't hate it. To me, it just felt like it focused mostly on Emily and Millicent, the mother and daughter, how right after Lee died, they needed to step up and lead the charge. Yes, the son wasn't really there. I mean, like he kind of just didn't exist to me, but the movie did wrap it up for me in a sense. I know probably they're going to make a third part, but for me, this is as far as it goes. But I just wanted that little extra, like, what happens next? Maybe the third part, for all we know, is going to be them trying to find batteries for the hearing aid. That's going to be the third part. Yeah, I don't have any hopes for the third part. For me, this movie is going to receive barely a 7 out of 10. So I guess that does it for this review of A Quiet Place Part 2. Please join us next time where we're going to review Black Widow.
One thing's for sure. I'm done running from my past.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.